So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, by the end of 2023, there's going to be almost 3 million electric vehicles on the road in the United States, over 500,000 just in California. And by 2035 in California, all new cars are going to have to be electric. No more gas cars should be sold. I mean, we'll see if we're able to accomplish that goal. But eventually, if you kind of follow that model, that corner gas station will be just as obsolete as the local horse stable 100 years ago. But only if we're smart about EV charging and building that electric infrastructure. And so far, my perspective, we're not being very smart about how to do this efficiently, inexpensively, and quickly. So as another perspective, it's my pleasure to introduce Tom McCalmont, who's the CEO of Paired Power. Over the past, it's almost been 25 years, Tom has been very active in the solar industry. We've been friends going back to the days when he was the CEO of Regrid Power and CEO of Real Good Solar. He's the president of McCalmont Engineering, which is a commercial and utility scale engineering firm. And we use them regularly for our commercial engineering. I'd say they're the preeminent commercial and utility scale solar engineering firm. They do projects all over the country. Tom, in his spare time, came up with this idea of pairing a direct DC solar charger with car charging, and he built a company called Paired Power. So he's the CEO of that. Paired Power has been exhibiting at shows every once in a while. They have a really innovative EV charging system. So I'm looking forward to Tom's insights about practical and affordable EV charging as opposed to the alternative, which is not very practical and not very affordable and really long-term. So welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks, Barry. Nice to be here.
All right. So I just thought we'd start out with a thought experiment about if you had a clean slate, what would be the best way to do EV charging? So first, what's the cheapest source of electricity?
Absolutely, sunlight.
Okay, right. Okay, it's sun. It's cheap. It's way cheaper than wind.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when do we have the most available sunlight to make electricity?
We have it every day, especially in California.
Especially
all day, every day.
Especially during the day.
Exactly.
People say we can, get power from the moon. No, that's not going to work. So it's daytime. So you're going to charge your car. Where are most cars during the day?
Yeah, they're at work or at school or, at the library, visiting commercial buildings.
Yeah, exactly. They're not necessarily at home, which is a good thing because if you always charged your car at home, that would kind of be by definition at night.
That's right.
When electricity is not cheapest.
That's
and
right.
There's not a lot of solar.
And it's fossil fuel at night. It's not solar.
Yeah, exactly. Or we can put in $1 gazillion worth of battery systems by the utilities and they can move around. But that's just redundant, slow, and expensive. Right. So the basic question is, why don't we have more EV chargers at work and at schools? And that kind of leads us to your rationale, I don't know, like 10 years ago of coming up with Paired Power.
That's right. Yeah, what Paired Power does is solar-powered EV charging. Very simple. And there are so many benefits to that approach. The energy is free. The fuel is free. It's 100% sustainable because all the energy is coming from the sun. It's fully resilient in our approach because we don't have to connect to the grid. So what does that mean? That means that if the grid goes out and everybody's driving an EV, we can still charge our cars. So lots of benefits.
And I also kind of like the fact that you don't have to be connected to the grid because oftentimes connecting to the grid is the most expensive and the longest delay as far as deploying anything.
Very difficult. Yeah, more and more, traditional grid chargers, those projects are delayed now for years. Not months, years, because of getting the approvals from the utility. Somebody told me the other day, just getting in the queue might be 18 months to get your project considered. Then it still has to be constructed. So very long timeframes and lots of costs associated with those installations.
I mean, it just begs the question of, has anybody ever done the math of how we would possibly install enough level 3 high-speed DC chargers on thoroughfares in order to kind of power every vehicle by 2035?
So here's my thought experiment, right? So there's roughly 30 million vehicles in California, half cars, half trucks. Each category of vehicle goes roughly 12,000 miles per year. If you add up all those miles, it's something like 350 billion miles. This is just California we're talking about, vehicle travel miles. If you convert that to electricity using what's the weight of steel that it can power with a kilowatt hour of electricity, how big do you think that is?
It's 175 billion kilowatt hours.
It's more than double the size of the current.
Wow.
In other words, we need to more than double the size of the current grid to electrify all of the cars, trucks, and buses in California. It's a massive problem. It's not something you can do alone with grid power, which is why we are so passionate about off-grid being a complementary technology and necessary. Solar-powered EV charging is necessary to get us to our climate reduction goals.
Well, in perhaps some alternative universe, it'd be feasible to find enough money to do that. But we're just looking at electric rates in California going up consistently 10 or 15% every single year with absolutely no end in sight. And I just watched these, feel-good commercials from PG&E saying, we're doing all we can to, increase the size of the grid and we're burying lines. And it's like, yeah, but following that math of all the electricity we're going to need, people are going to be looking at $2 kilowatt hour electric bills.
Absolutely.
And, you can't do that.
That's right.
All right, so paired power logically makes sense. Tell us about a typical paired power system. And I know you have different alternatives and options.
Yeah, so our kind of flagship product is something we call the Pear Tree. We innovated this during the pandemic. It's a pop-up solar canopy. It can be built in a single day. It does not require any heavy construction, does not require, cranes or lifts or things like that. It can be built by two workers in a single day. It provides the power source to a battery, and then that battery is in turn used to charge EVs. So it can charge up to 2 vehicles and give them an impressive amount of range every day, and just is a absolutely delightful system in terms of being, off-grid, solar-powered, 100% green, no cost for fuel. All of the things that I mentioned is provided by that product.
So that's just deliver it to the site, get a couple people to expand it, do some final wiring and connections, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Now, I know you also have been doing some parking lot charging stations.
Mm-hmm.
We actually help you wire up one. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Yes, we have higher powered versions, direct DC versions of our technology, so we can charge directly from the sun to the vehicle. That is typically a larger project, like a large canopy, but again, has all the benefits of daytime charging, perfect for workplaces, commercial outlets, places like that. Absolutely.
And how is that business line going as far as getting contractors and people to start installing the larger commercial scale? Because to me, that's what we're going to need, every single parking lot facility having level 2 chargers, and people could just kind of, charge at 7 or 8 kilowatt hours. And that's going to be enough to soak up all that sun.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, I mean, there's a ton of interest in these commercial projects, the ability to put them in quickly to avoid these delays that I talked about with waiting for utility approvals, waiting for long permitting cycles, be able to actually have your charging stations up and running in a relatively short time and be, fully green and solar powered.
We're here in California. Why aren't there more companies putting in charging stations or at malls or at libraries or things like that? Why isn't that happening more? I see there was kind of a burst of solar canopy parking lot structures going in, and it seems to have tapered off a little bit. Why is that?
I think it's because of the delays. I think people are waiting. They're in queues. I think it's a big part of it. So the projects might be in the minds of people and they're thinking about it, but it takes a long time to get those approvals and get those permits. And the other thing is that, and a lot of people don't really appreciate this, grid capacity is really a huge issue. So if you're putting in 2 chargers at a retail outlet, sure, that's not hard. You can find enough power to do that. But if you're putting in 50, the grid capacity at that facility is not big enough, and it requires a new service drop, a new connection from the utility. And that's where these long delays come into place. PG&E will tell you, sure, we can put that in for you 2 years from now. So...
yeah, that just sidetracks it. Now, the other delays that we're seeing, because we do commercial solar installations, is the economics for that have been constrained by the utilities. We're on net metering 3, so that these facilities really won't get any benefit at all on weekends when they have excess power. They only get it during the weekday when people are using it. And then also there's some labor issues that are making it much more expensive to do this installation. So I I guess I'm paranoid. Call me paranoid, but I'm looking at utilities rigging the game so that the most cost-effective, practical, fastest alternatives, i.e., putting in paired power DC chargers in companies and rooftops all over the place, that really is a difficult thing to do. They make it more expensive. And then kind of the other thing that I've seen and run some numbers on is that in California you have these things called demand charges.
Yeah, that's right.
And so when everybody comes into work at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning and they plug in, although they may be getting very inexpensive solar kilowatt hours on the roof, the utilities basically say, oh, well, when the cloud went over, your peak energy went way up, and now you've got a multi-$1,000 bill for that month.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a good example of that, if you put in grid chargers, the average level 2 grid charger is about 6 kilowatts. Let's say you put 50 of them in. That's 300 kilowatts. Demand charges are close to $50 a kilowatt in the summer. So that's thousands and thousands of dollars per month that you're going to pay in demand charges for those chargers, for those EV chargers. Whereas if you do them off grid, you don't have those demand charges. You have no utility costs.
Right. You do it off grid, you have batteries to store up some power from the weekend, and then, when the cloud goes over, you won't be charging as much. You pull your energy from your battery, but you don't get clobbered with those demand charges.
That's right.
Oh, all right. So I guess we're seeing some of the logic as to why there aren't more chargers at work in public places. There's the built-in obstructions that the utilities create, plus these rate issues. If a company wanted to do some more of this EV charging or a mall or something, what would the approach be that you recommend?
Well, certainly we can offer them an alternative.
Yeah.
And that alternative would be, either of the products that we talked about that operate off grid. And it's a much faster implementation, much faster installation, still provides very good service to the EV drivers. A lot of people come into EVs for the first time sort of have the gas station model in their head. Like, I have to go to the fueling station and fill it up. And what you realize the longer you drive an EV, I've driven one for 12 years, is that actually doesn't matter anymore. I don't want to go to the fuel station. What I want to do is plug in wherever I am, walk away and go do something else and not wait for it to fuel. So it's a slower, I don't really need a fast fuel. Now, if I'm on the highway, that's different, sure. If I'm driving to LA, I want a fast charger along, every 50 miles so that I can make my trip quickly. But around town, it doesn't matter. I just want a slow charge. Plug in at school, plug in at work, plug in at church, plug in at, the library, plug in at a commercial business that I'm visiting. And while I'm doing something else, shopping, working out, whatever it might be, my vehicle is gradually filling. And when I get back into it, do I care if it's full? No, I never care if it's full. I just look to see that I have enough range to get to my next destination, which probably is only 10 or 20 miles away, so I don't need a lot. So my gauge in my car never goes to full and never goes to empty. It just floats somewhere in the middle all the time.
Yeah, that's kind of the way mine is. I just think about my experiences. I've been driving an EV for a long time also. And when I go on long trips, to me, a long trip is going to Sacramento. So it's 150 miles to Sacramento. Right. My vehicle has a 270 mile. The new one has a 300 mile range. But I kind of drive sometimes fast, and it might be cold, and I don't quite get that full range. So I get to my destination, and I know that I don't have enough battery juice to get home.
Right.
And so what I'm forced to do is I'm forced to find a fast DC charger. And I've got my favorite fast DC charger at a 7-Eleven somewhere in Davis.
And I've been to that one too.
And just don't get me started. There's room for 2 cars to charge. There's 2 cords.
Yep.
But the 2 cords cannot possibly reach to 2 cars. It depends on if one person is using one and the charger is on the left side, the other person has a charger also on the left side, the cord doesn't reach.
Yeah.
But anyway, put that aside. So I'm there. I'm the first one. I'm charging. I got to sit there for half an hour, and I top off my battery. And then I go to my meeting for 4 hours, 6 hours. Thinking about meetings at the Contractor State License Board in California. I'll be there for like 6 hours.
Right.
The hell with that, that fast charger. I just go to the meeting, and it's at the CSLB. And if they had 10 chargers instead of the 2 chargers that they have. And these are level 2, 6 or 7 kilowatt chargers. If they had enough chargers, I would just park. I'd be happy to pay whatever it costs to charge it up. And I don't have to worry about it. And I'll go get my, 60 kilowatt hours or whatever it is. And it's plenty to get home.
That's right. And that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Like for 6 hours or, a long meeting like that, you'll get enough.
Yeah.
It'll be enough to add, top up, give you more than you had when you arrived.
Yeah.
Enough to get you back home again. The other thing I'll just comment on it, the frustration of many EV drivers is they just don't work. Like you go out and use a public charger at a Walmart, at a shopping center, and maybe there'll be 4 stations there and half of them will be down. And so we're very committed. We're very aware of this problem, that customers are unhappy about the reliability of the chargers. So we're very committed to delivering a great experience to the user, to make sure our systems are always up and running and you don't have that experience of I arrive at a charger that I can't use. I mean, if you went to the gas station and even 10% of the pumps didn't work, it would be an unbelievably frustrating situation. Nobody would tolerate it. And it's well more than 10% of the EV chargers, the public EV chargers out in the world, that don't work. I find that experience over and over again.
Typical example, I was going to Sacramento about a month ago, and I, for whatever reason, wanted to charge up a little bit more. I didn't go to my favorite 7-Eleven in Davis. I went to a Target, I think near Rancho Cordova. And there's really cool apps, and it'll tell you where chargers are. And I went to find some that my Ford Lightning has, I think 250,000 kilowatt hours free. So I'm like, I'll get it free. I have to go to Electrify America. It's fine. I'll go ahead. And it's all registered. And I went to the Target, and they had 8 Electrify America chargers there, 4 stations, 2 cords each. Half of them were down.
Yeah.
And even the 4 that were working, they were on, but the LCD screens were facing due south.
And you couldn't read it.
And the screens were dead.
Yeah.
They was just like, there's nothing you can do.
Yep.
Now, fortunately, if you're registered with these networks, even if you can't push the buttons, if you plug in, it'll handshake with your vehicle and you can start charging. I was lucky to do that, but super frustrating. We were in Fresno a couple weeks ago, and it was like 2/3, 3/4 of the stations we went to, we couldn't use.
Yeah.
And when you start driving around and your battery's getting down, I remember somebody, it was you, talking about 8 years ago or 10 years ago, and you were down south somewhere near LA, and you were like in the middle of the night trying to find enough juice to kind of get to your hotel.
Yeah, that's right. I was in Bakersfield. I was running low. I had down to like 20 miles of range. I went to, and it was an Electrify America charger. I went to it and thinking, because it was a fast charger, thinking, oh, this will be great. And I got there and they were out of commission, all of them. I couldn't charge. And so I had to limp to a Walmart that was about 10 miles away. Now I'm down to 10 miles of range, hoping that the charger when I got there actually worked. And it did. And I was able to refill. But that's not a good experience. That's a problem that we as an industry have, and why we at Paired Power are so focused on trying to give a better experience and make sure our chargers are always running.
Yeah. And hand it to Tesla, because most Tesla drivers don't suffer from that.
The same.
They did a really good job.
They're the one network that works.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah. But my Ford Lightning truck does not plug into the Tesla network.
Correct.
So, but it has a big pickup bed, so I can probably put maybe a 500-foot extension cord in the back. That's still not going to get me home.
There you go.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about costs. What are some of the costs for EV charging? And you can look at it with Paired Power, with charging at home, or high-speed charging when you're on a highway.
Yeah. So a really good question. I really believe you have to look at total costs. It's not just the cost of the charger. You can buy a level 2 commercial charger for a couple $1,000, but to get that installed, add another $15,000 or maybe $20,000. And the time delay, the cost, the opportunity cost of waiting 2 years to get, the permits and the approvals from the utility and all of that, getting that. So you have to factor in those costs. Then after that's all built, you've got the ongoing costs that we talked about earlier of demand and energy charges. So you add all that together, it's a significant cost. Our solution is more expensive at the front end, but it's also eligible for some pretty good incentives. We're a solar resource, so we're eligible for the federal investment tax credit, a bunch of EV charger incentives. So that brings that cost down significantly. So on a total cost of ownership basis, we're going to be cheaper over the life of that charger infrastructure than any other solution.
Now, what about applications for larger paired power installations for commercial, like our parking lot here at our office, where we would really like to have 10 charging stations?
Yeah. So the simplest implementation, if it's daytime only, just a direct DC, solar canopy powers the chargers. We're working on taking that technology that we've developed in Pear Tree with the batteries, combining that with the higher capacity of a larger array, so that you could then even provide nighttime charging in that scenario. So big solar canopy, batteries provide an additional source to store that. Could be grid connected as well, could provide both, but the combination of the two is really compelling.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about a commercial building, and we're going to be filling the roof or half filling the roof with solar, and there's limitations and extra costs involved because it has to be grid connected. But if we were to put a non-grid connected system on the roof, then the utility would not have to be involved whatsoever.
That's right.
And I wouldn't even need a canopy because I got all the space on the roof.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's all right. We'll have to talk about
that
after
this.
Yeah. Okay. So makes a lot of sense. It's fast. It can be inexpensive as far as this attitude. But what's the attitude towards EV charging in the future of the grid from a utility perspective? What are they trying to force us into?
Well, the utility, same with solar, they're trying to force all of society to buy everything from them because they make more money that way. And frankly, that's not always the best approach. Having a more diversified energy environment that consists of distributed energy resources or off-grid energy resources in combination with the grid is going to be far and away the cheapest and the fastest to implement. And if we're really going to be serious about climate change and tackling climate change, we have to be fast.
Yeah, from my observations over the past 10 years, specifically with regards to commercial solar and EV charging, is that at least in California, the utilities have done an absolute masterful job of rigging the game, getting it wired up. So you have to buy the chargers from them. You need to pay them for the kilowatt hours that are being generated at their rate. You're not even sometimes allowed to mark it up.
Right.
You have to wait years, literally, because you're going to need a fast connection for those level 3 high-speed chargers. And a lot of the work is going to have to be done by their employees. So that's just going to take forever. Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got all these companies with big flat roofs and big parking lots and thousands of people parking every single day. And all they want to do is be able to plug in at 6 kilowatts or so.
Totally.
And use it. Now, it would also be feasible to have some kind of demand charge management if you were connected to the grid, where you would say, all right, well, we're setting the peak demand for this month at 100 kilowatts, and if we get to 99, then we turn everybody's chargers down.
Yeah, right.
Not hard to do.
That's right.
But in the meantime, we're really moving towards an economy, a transportation economy, and an EV charging economy, and a solar economy where the solar panels are 500 miles away. We have to underground lines all the way to a substation, and then the utility's got to actually be involved in putting in those high-speed chargers, and they really want to do it kind of following the service station model because that's where they're going to make the most money, whereas intelligently the right thing to do is just put those solar panels on the roof of the site where the cars are parked, just like homes, just like offices, just like malls.
The utilities would be better served to be more collaborative in a solution, because what it drives is grid defection. People start to say, well, maybe I just want to be completely decoupled from the utility.
Yeah. And we're kicking around ways to do that.
Right.
And, we'll see if that actually works. And that actually, one way of doing that is, these EVs, they have 100 kilowatt hour plus batteries in them. What's the attitude of the vehicle manufacturers towards EV charging and partnerships with utilities?
Yeah, I think they're mostly neutral about that. The one sort of contentious area still is what we call V2G, vehicle to grid, where you're actually making use of the battery in that vehicle as a resource that you could pull power out of it and put it back into the grid. There are a lot of interesting benefits of that approach, but there's still a lot of things to be worked out in terms of both policy and regulatory framework for that, as well as warranty issues around the vehicle. So it's still very early days for that technology, but I think it has promise.
Yeah. I'll be a little bit more cynical about that. It looks like the utilities have done a good job of convincing vehicle manufacturers to partner with them for vehicle to grid infrastructure benefits where
For the
utility.
Right.
So you're going to help the utility
right.
and your customer who, after all, just spent $50,000 or $100,000 on this four-wheel battery, they get negligible benefits. And plus the customers, I look at what Sunrun is doing with their charging network with Ford. It's like, it's $10,000 to connect thing up. And that's just ludicrous. There are better ways, and we'll see kind of on how that evolves. And I think the EV manufacturers will start to kind of wake up to this of we can make more money by making the battery available to drivers in a non-driving situation than to try and give the customers pennies and pony up and be pals with the utilities. I just read an interesting article. I think it was basically talked about what is the impact on the battery's lifespan if the vehicle's battery is being used regularly for stationary use.
Yeah.
And this article said it was only affecting the longevity of the battery by 5 to 8%.
Yeah, I bet it's very small. Yeah. If you keep a lithium battery in that kind of middle range of 10% to 90%, it'll last a very long time. It'll many, many cycles. And so as long as that's the application, you're not drawing it all the way down to zero every day and charging it all the way up to 100% every day. It'll work fine in stationary applications. There's no reason not to consider it.
Yeah. Boy, there's a lot of potential. We're a couple of solar warriors here.
Absolutely.
And, now solar and EV warriors, and really trying to get this grid thing figured out in a way that makes better economic sense rather than just kind of casting our lot with the utilities where they're going to spend $1 trillion to meet the needs. It's fascinating, a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for every solar company, for every EV charging company, for every vehicle manufacturing company, for every person who's involved in home electrification, because when you want to electrify your home, you're going to need that power at night. And yes, it's nice to have 20 kilowatt hours of battery storage connected to your solar system, but wouldn't it be nice if you could plug in that 100 kilowatt hour battery and just on a really cold night and you got that heat pump running, you just need a little bit more juice? It's a hell of a lot better for the environment than throwing a few logs in the gas stove.
Right.
All right. Any other things you want to talk about, Tom?
Well, it's been a great conversation, Barry. I've really enjoyed it. I would just offer that, the EV market is just taking off just tremendously. The opportunity is huge. And if you look at the data, it grows just as the solar industry did, as our life experience has been, about 30% per year. Markets that grow 30% per year double in size every 3 years. And so we're going to see this take off in a massive way, both for EVs and for EV chargers. And I'm just excited to be a part of that revolution.
Yeah, I'm happy to be doing it too. And, we've kind of cast our lot in with that. And I feel good every single day getting up early in the morning to go to work. Okay. Now, how can people get in touch with you at Paired Power?
Yeah, so Paired Power, best way is to email us at info@pairedpower.com or sales@pairedpower.com, either one. We'll get to the right people and we'll follow up and get in touch with you. We also have an 800 number if you'd like to call.
How do you spell Paired Power? What's the complete URL?
Paired, P-A-I-R-E-D, power.
Okay.
Pairedpower.com. It's because we pair solar with other things like EV charging.
And I'm very observant. I noticed that your EV chargers look like pears.
Exactly. We kind of do the little pun of a pair of pears.
Okay. You got 2 on 1. All right. Great. Thanks, Tom. That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show, and I'm glad you were able to join us here. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always go to the Energy Show website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.